October 21st. The things are getting restless, but the restraints still serve. I stopped by Larry's place this morning to suggest he answer to the name Lucky, if so addressed by any woodsy denizens in his wanderings. This necessitated me giving him a little bit of background concerning the speculations as to his status. He has agreed to be even more circumspect in his comings and goings. I filled him in on the rest, too, since I considered us partners. Everything, that is, save Linda Enderby's true identity. I was loath to destroy his illusions, considering that nice old lady whose company had given him such pleasure. Whatever had been learned there had been learned, and I doubted it could have been much in such a bizarre case as his. Hear anything more about the police and their search? I asked. They're still investigating, but they seem to have questioned everyone now, and they're starting to search the fields along the way. I think the latest theory is the officer might have been thrown from his horse, which did make it back to their stables. I guess he didn't wash up. Maybe he made it out to sea. Possibly, but I'm sure they are looking at any wash-ups pretty closely. Wonder what this beating of the bushes might mean to the Count if they get too far afield. I'll bet if you check today, you'll find he's moved. So, you think he has another place too? Of course. That's his style, and he has the right idea. Everyone should have a place to run to. You can never be too careful. Do you? He smiled. I hope you do too, he said. When I smile, no one can tell. I went looking for Greymalk then, and I wanted to see whether or not I could persuade her to climb down into the crypt for me again. But she wasn't anywhere about. Finally, I gave up and wandered over to Rastoff's place. Quicklime wasn't readily available either, and I began rearing up and peering in windows. I spotted Rastoff himself, slouched in a chair, vodka bottle in his own hand. What might be his icon clutched to his chest with the other? Something stirred on the windowsill, and I realized it was my erstwhile partner, Quicklime. He raised his head, stared at me, and gestured with his head to the adjacent room. And with that, he slid from the sill and was gone. I made my way back to the near window of that room, which was open slightly. Moments later, he emerged. Hi, Quick, I said. How's it going? Sometimes I wish we were back in the fields again. I'd be getting ready for a long winter's sleep. Bad night? Got out just in time. He's at it again. Drinking and singing sad songs. He could get us in a lot of trouble when he's sad too much. He'd better be sober for the big night. I should hope so. We went off to the rear of the place. Busy? He asked me. Oh, you better believe it. Listen, Snuff, the boss doesn't tell me everything, but Nightwind said just a day or two back that there are divinatory ways for discovering who's an opener and who's a closer. Is that true? He's right, I said, but they're unreliable before the death of the moon. You really have to have some juice to make them work. How soon after? Several days. So people could be finding out everyone's status soon. They will. They always do. That's why it's important to finish any mutual business before then. Once the lines are drawn, your former partners may be your new enemies. I don't like the idea of having you or Nightwind for an enemy. It doesn't follow that we have to kill each other before the big event. In fact, I've always looked upon such undertakings as a sign of weakness. But there's always some killing. So I've heard. Seems a waste of energy, though. Especially when such things will be taken care of at the end anyhow. And half of us will die in the backlash from the other half's winning. It's seldom a 50-50 split of openers and closers. You never know what the disposition will be or who will finally show up. I heard once there was an attempt where everyone withdrew on the last day. Nobody showed. And that was wrong too. Think of it. Any one of them with guts enough could have had it his own way. How soon till the word gets out, Snuff? Pretty soon. I suppose someone could be working on it right now. Do you know? No, but I'll know soon enough. I don't like knowing until I have to. He crawled up onto an old tree stump. I sat down on the ground beside him. For one thing, it'd interfere with me asking you to do something for me right now. What? What is it? I want you to come back with me to the crypt and check it out. I need to know if the Count's still there. No, he said then. We don't have to go. Why not? I already know. He's not there. How do you know this? I went out last night. I hung myself on a plum tree that I'd learned from Needle. I know he frequents it when he feeds. When I came by, I said, "Good evening, Needle." "Quicklime, is that you?" he answered. "Indeed," I replied. "How go your farings?" Well, he said. "And your own twisting ways?" "Oh, capital," I answered. "I take it you've come to feed?" "Yes, I always come here last, for these plums are my favorite, and it puts a fine end to the harvesting of bugs. I prefer to say best of them for the last." "Yeah, as it should be," I said. "With all endeavors. Tell me," for I was wise in these wastes now, having lived with Rastov. "Have you ever sampled the long fallen plums? Those which look wrinkled, ruined, and unappetizing?" "No," he replied. "That would be silly when so many good ones still hang up on the tree." "Ah," I told him, "but looks may be deceptive, and good is certainly a relative term." "What do you mean?" he asked. "I too enjoy the fruits," I said, "and have learned their secret. Those over yonder on the ground are far better." "How can this be?" he said. "The secret is, as they lie there, cut off forever from the source of their existence. They draw upon the remaining life to continue their growth. True, the effects wither them. They ferment from their own beings and create a new special elixir, superior to the simple juices of those on the tree." "They taste better?" "No, they do not. That goes beyond more than taste. It is the thing of the spirit." "I guess I ought to try it then." "You will not be disappointed. I recommend it highly." So he descended to the earth, came upon one of those I had indicated, and bit into it. "Ah! These are no good. Overripe, and give it a chance. Take more. Swallow it down. Then some more. Wait. Just a bit." And he sampled again and again. A little later, "I feel slightly dizzy, but it's not unpleasant. In fact," he tried another. Suddenly, more enthusiastic than another. "Quicklime, you're right. There's something very special about them. There is a warm feeling." "Yes," I answered. "And the dizziness isn't quite dizziness. It feels good." "Take more. Take lots more," I told him. "Go with it as far as it will take you." Shortly, his words grew harder to understand, so I had to slide down from the tree to be sure. "You were with the Count when he created his new graves, weren't you? And so learned that locations, and that he was moving to one last night," he finished. "Well done," I said. "Well done. I hope he didn't awaken feeling the way I did the other morning." I did not linger, for I gather it is a bad thing to see snakes when you are in that condition. At least Rastov says it is. With me, it was humans that I saw last time, all those passing gypsies. And of course, yourself. "How many graves are there beside the crypt?" "2, he said. One to the southwest, the other to the southeast. I want to see them. I'll take you. The one to the southwest is nearer. Let's go there first. We set out, crossing a stretch of countryside I had not visited before. Eventually we came to a small graveyard, a rusted iron fence about it. The gate was not secured, and I shouldered it open. "This way," Quicklime said, and I followed him. He led me to a small mausoleum beside a bare willow tree. "In there! The vault to the right is opened. There is a new casket within." "Is the Count inside it?" "He shouldn't be. Needle said he'd be sleeping in the other one." I entered nervously and pawed at the lid for some time before I found a way to open it. When I did, it came up quite easily. It was empty, except for a handful or two of dirt at its bottom. "Man, it looks like the real thing," I said. "Take me to the other one now." We set off on a longer trek, and as we went, I asked, "Did Needle tell you when these graves were established?" "Several weeks ago," he answered. "Before the dark of the moon?" "Yes." He was very insistent on that point. "Oh, this will ruin my pattern." And everything was such a perfect fit. "Sorry." "You sure that's what he said?" "Positive." The sun shone brightly. There were clouds about it, and of course a goodly cluster off towards the doctor's place. There came a bit of chill with the northerly breeze. We made our way cross-country through the colors of autumn, browns and reds and yellows. The ground was damp, though not spongy. I inhaled the odors of forest and earth. The smoke curled from a single chimney in the distance, and I thought about the elder gods and how they might change things if the way were opened. The world could be a good place, or a nasty place, even without supernatural intervention. We had worked out our own ways of doing things, to find our own goods and evils. Some gods were great for individual ideals to be aimed at, rather than actual ends to be sought here and now. As for the elders, I could see no profit in intercourse with those who transcend utterly. I like to keep all things abstract. Platonic realms, and I don't want to have to concern myself with physical princesses. I breathed the smell of wood smoke, loam, rotting windfall apples, still morning-rimmed perhaps, and in an orchard shade. I saw a high, calling flock veeing its way south. I heard a mole burrowing beneath my feet. "Does Rastoff drink like that every day?" I asked. "No," Quicklime replied. "He only started on the Moon Death Eve." "Has Linda Enderby visited him?" "Yes. They had a long talk about poetry. And someone named Pushkin?" "Do you know whether she got a look at the icon?" "So, we have it." "No. Drunk or sober, he wouldn't show it to anybody until the time of its need. When I was looking for you earlier, I saw him holding what looked like an icon. Is it on wood?" "About 3 inches high, 9 inches long." "Yes, and he did have it out from its hiding place today. Whenever he feels particularly depressed, he says it cheers him up to go to the shores of Holly and consider enactments of ruin, and then to contemplate the uses he has for it all." "That could be almost taken as a closer's statement," I said. "I sometimes think you're a closer, Snuff." Our eyes met. I halted. "At some point, you have to take a chance." "I am." "So we're not alone." "Let's keep it quiet," I said. "In fact, let's not speak of it again." "But you could at least tell me whether you know if any of the others are." "I don't." I started forward again. A small plunge taken, a small victory grasped. We passed a pair of cows, heads down, munching. A small roll of thunder came from the good doctor's direction. Looking left, I could make out my hill, which I'd named Dog's Nest. Is this one farther south than the other? I asked. Yes, he hissed. I kept trying to visualize the pattern, and I tugged in new directions by the new focus of residents. It was irritating to keep finding and losing candidates for the center. It seemed almost as if the forces were playing games with me. And it was especially different because it's difficult to keep surrendering these locations that were so appropriate. At last, our way took us to what seemed to be like somebody's family plot. Only the family it belonged to was long gone. A collapsed building lay on a nearby hilltop. It was barely a foundation, really. And I saw the remains of the family that had been adopted when Quicklime led me to the overgrown graveyard. All but the eastern side of its fence was fallen, and that stood atilt. He led me among the tall grasses and a great stone slab. There were signs of recent digging about the perimeter, and the stone had been raised and offset to the side, leaving a narrow opening through which I knew I must squeeze. I stuck my nose inside and sniffed. Dust. Want me to go check it out? Quicklime said. Let's both go down, I replied. After this walk, I at least want to look. I went through and descended a series of uneven steps. There was a puddle at the bottom I stepped over. There were others about it, too. I couldn't avoid them all. It was dark, but eventually I made out an open casket set up above a raved area. Another had been moved to make room for it. I approached to sniff the thing. What odors I might have sought, I'm not sure. The Count had been scentless the night we'd met, a very disconcerting thing to one of my temperament and olfactory equipment. As I drew nearer, my vision cleared, and I wondered why he'd left the lid open. It seemed most inappropriate for one of his persuasion. Rearing up, I placed a forepaw on the casket side and looked down into the interior. Quicklime, nearby, said, "What is it?" And I realized I'd made a small woofing sound. The game has grown a great deal more serious, I said. He climbed up on the ledge, then mounted the end of the casket where he hovered, looking like a pharaoh's headdress. "Oh my," he said. A skeleton lay within, atop a long black cloak. It still had on a suit of dark garments, somewhat in disarray now, opened in the front. Splitting the sternum was a large wooden stake, angled slightly, passing far down, missing the backbone, and to the left. There was considerable dry dust within and without. "Looks like the new site wasn't as secret as he thought," I said. "I wonder whether you were the opener or closer," Quicklime said. "I'd have guessed opener, but I suppose we'll never know." "Who do you think nailed him?" "No idea." "Do you see Needle anywhere about?" "No. Do you think they got him too?" "Could be. If he turns up, though, he'll certainly bear questioning." I climbed the stair and emerged into the light. I started walking back. "What happens now?" Quicklime asked. "I have to make my rounds," I said. "Do we just go on and wait for it to happen again?" "No. We exercise caution." We slithered and trotted back to our own area. Jack was out. I took care of business about the house and went looking for Grey Malk to fill her in. I was surprised to encounter Jack engaged in conversation with Crazy Jill, right on her back step. He had in his hand a cup of sugar which he had presumably just borrowed. He ended the conversation and turned away as I approached. Grey Malk was nowhere about. Jack told me as I walked home with him that night that we might ride into town for supplies of a mundane nature soon. Later, as I was out front, still looking for Grey, the great detective's coach passed, him still in his Linda Enderby guise. Our eyes met and held for several long seconds. Then he was gone. I went back inside and took a long nap. I woke near dusk and made the rounds again. The things in the mirror still clustered, pulsating lightly. The flaw appeared slightly larger. This could be a trick of memory and imagination. I resolved to call Jack's attention soon to it. Eating and drinking and passing outside then, I sought Grey Malk once more. I found her in front of her yard doing catnappery on the steps. "Hello, I looked for you earlier," I said. "Missed you." She yawned, stretched, cleaned her shoulders. "I was out, checking the church and the vicarage." "Did you get inside?" "No, I looked into every opening I could, though." "Learn anything interesting?" "The vicar keeps a skull on his desk in the study." "Memento mori," I remarked. "Churchmen are sometimes big on that sort of thing." "Maybe it came with the place as part of the furnishings." "It's resting in the bowl." "The bowl?" "The bowl. The old pentacle bowl is that they talked about." So I'd been wrong to assign that tool to the good doctor. "That accounts for an item." Then, disingenuously, "Now, if you can tell me where the 2 wands are." She gave me a strange look and continued grooming herself. "I had to climb outside of the place," she said. "Why?" "I heard someone crying upstairs. So I made my way up the siding and looked into what seems to be the proper window. I saw a girl on a bed. She had on a blue dress, and there was a long chain around her ankle. The other end was attached to the bed frame." "Who was it?" "Well, I met Tikla a little later," she went on. "I don't think she was too eager to talk to a cat. Still, I persuaded her to tell me the girl's name is Lynette. She's the daughter of the vicar's late wife, Janet, by a previous marriage." "Why was she chained up?" "Tikla said she was being disciplined for attempting to run away." "Very suspicious. How old is she?" 13. "Yes. Just right. Sacrifice, of course." "Of course." "What did you give her for the information?"
"I told her the story of our encounter with the big man last night. The possibility that the gypsies may be associated with the Count, that sort of thing."
"I better tell you something about the Count," I said, and detailed my investigations with quicklime.
"No matter whose side he was on, I can't say I'm sorry to see him out of the picture. He was extremely frightening."
"You met him?"
"I saw him one night, departing from the first crypt. I'd hidden myself on a tree limb and watched it happen. He seemed to ooze up out of there as if he wasn't really moving any muscles, just flowing the way quicklime can do. Then he stood a moment with his cloak flapping about him in the wind, turning his head, looking at the world as if he owned it, and if he was deciding what part would amuse him just then. Then he laughed. I'll never forget that sound. He just threw his head back and barked. Not the way you do, unless you've a special way of barking just before you eat something that might not want to be eaten, and that pleases you and adds to the flavor. And then he moved, and it played tricks with my eyes. He was different things, different shapes, flapping cloak all about, even in different places at the same time, and then he was gone, like a piece of the cloak sailing away in the moonlight. I wasn't unhappy to see him go.
I never saw anything that dramatic, I said, but I met him at even closer quarters, and I was impressed. I paused then. Did Tikla give you anything but the story on Lynette?
Everyone seems to be onto the idea of the old mansion at the center now. The vicar told me he had served a much larger church once, south of here, in the old days. It was one of the last Henry had ruined, as an example to the others that he meant business. It makes such a good candidate that I'm irritated at the Count's bad taste in throwing out the calculations. Have you figured out the new site yet?
No. I should be about that pretty soon, though.
You'll let me know?
I'll take you with me when I do it.
When will that be?
Probably tomorrow. I was going to walk up the road to see the gypsies now.
Why?
They're sometimes colorful. You can come along if you like.
I will.
We headed up the road. It was another clear-skied night with multitudes of stars. I could hear distant music as we neared Larry's place. Beyond, I could make out the glow of bonfires. As we continued, I could distinguish the sounds of violin, guitar, tambourine, a single drum within the music. We drew nearer, coming in at last to a hiding place beneath a caravan. I smelled dogs, but we were downwind and no one bothered us. Several older gypsy women were dancing, and there was a singer making wailing sounds. The music was stirring and the dancers' movements stylized, like the steps of the long-legged birds I'd seen in warmer climates. There were many fires. From some of them came the smells of cooking. The spectacle was as much of a thing of shadows as the light. However, I rather liked the wailing, being something of a connoisseur when it comes to barks and howls. We watched for some time, taken by the bright colors of the dancers and the players' garments, just as much as by the movement and the sounds. They played several tunes, and then the fiddler gestured towards the knot of spectators, holding out his instrument and pointing to it. I heard a sound of protest, but he insisted. Finally, a woman moved forward into the light. It was several moments before I realized it was Linda Enderby. The great detective was making yet another one of his social calls. Back in the shadows, I could now make out the short, husky form of his companion. Over several protests, he accepted the violin and the bow, and he touched the strings. Then he cradled the instrument as if he knew the kind well. He raised a bow, paused for a moment, and began to play. He was good. It was not gypsy music, but it was some old folk tune I'd heard somewhere before. When it was done, he moved immediately into another, which he worked several variations. He played and grew wilder and wilder. Abruptly, he halted, took a step, as if suddenly moving out of a dream. He bowed then, and returned the instrument to its owner. His movements in that moment were entirely masculine. I thought of all the controlled thinking, the masterfully developed deductions which have served to bring him here, and then this momentary slipping into the wildness he must keep so carefully restrained, and then seeing him come out of it, smiling back into his disguise again. I saw in this the action of an enormous will, and suddenly I knew him much better. Suddenly I knew he had to be learning, as we were learning other aspects, the scope of our enterprise. He could well be right behind us at the end. That he was almost in some way a player. More a force, really, in the game. And I respected him, as I have respected few of the many beings I have known. Later, as we walked back, Greymouth said, "It was good to get away for a time." "Yes," I said, "it was." And I regarded the sky, where the moon was growing.